What's up, guys? This is Nick from P2W Fantasy. Got two special guests on tonight, going live here actually on Twitter. So hopefully we can get some live viewers. If not, everybody can catch it later. But I got two heavy hitters on the episode tonight that I'm excited about. I've actually been in collaborations with both of these guys before, so I respect both. I'll go one by one here, just to avoid the awkward crossover. But I got Chris Robin at Detroit Beastie. Chris has been on the podcast before. He's also contributed to articles for P2W. So I'm always happy to have Chris on. He's probably the most known Twitter fantasy guy in the community, in my opinion, just because I see him linking up with everybody all the time. So, Chris, how are you doing tonight, man?
Well, thank you. I guess the best way to describe it is I should have brought you flowers for the introduction. I mean, come on. I'm Chris. I'm from Detroit, wearing the Red Wings hat, and I like to talk fantasy sports, any kind, DFS, Dynasty, IDP. My big MO is to let's help, love, and support everybody we can, especially in this community, because if you guys haven't noticed, everybody and their mother has a fantasy Twitter or something on Facebook. So everyone wants their opinion heard. So let's try and help people out within reason, I think, Steve, right?
Oh, definitely, man.
Yeah, I respect that a lot. And I will note, Chris does a ton of work with his articles and info with everything. And he's also affiliated with DFS Cheat Sheet. I think you are maybe the face of that because I always see them pretty much promoting everything you do all the time. Also here today, I got Steve Catalano. Steve, I hopped on his podcast before. I've also had Steve contribute to some of my articles. Steve is with Climb the Pocket, and happy to have him on as well. Steve, how's it going, man?
I mean, it's going great, man. Nick, ever since you've been in the Twitter game and whatnot, I've seen you, and you've grown a lot. And honestly, I love the work you do. And like Chris said, I'm a part of like just growing the community and whatnot. Obviously, it's saturated and whatnot, but that's why we like to share everyone's opinion, because there's never too many opinions when it comes to especially fantasy football. You want to get every sort of, side of every single player and whatnot. It helps to get a lot of perspective for everyone. So I'm glad to be a part of that. Like he mentioned, I'm with Climb the Pocket. So we've got a good YouTube page over there. If you go over and subscribe, we really appreciate it. But we're definitely growing and whatnot, and definitely happy to be here.
Absolutely. So we'll just get to the topic of the night. So we all love to have our own hot take, and I think every time you open up Twitter or whatever social media, I think some of the first things you see sometimes is somebody coming out and saying this player is going to do this season, and getting a lot of comments on it. And I think it's part of daily Twitter talk and fantasy talk, and I respect it because you're kind of putting your name attached to some of these hot takes. But what I thought we could do tonight is discuss some of the ones that have popped up on my timeline due to them commenting on the thread that I had of, what is your hot take? So just going to list off a bunch that I thought were pretty good. There was probably like 20 to 30 of them, so we just narrowed it down to 10. But the big thing us three are going to do is I'll read it, and you are going to tell me if you are going to buy it or fade it. And just to clarify what we mean by that, buy it means you can buy into the thought. Maybe it's not 100% what you think, but you can actually buy into the thought and see it actually being a possibility. Or if you fade it, we're obviously not disrespecting other people's hot takes, but it's just something that you don't really see that likely to happen in 2020. So just to clarify what we mean by that, we'll kick it off with the first one.
Let's go.
Darius, guys, might have been the hottest name on Twitter the last week or so, in my opinion, what I've seen. But I have two different takes right now, so we're gonna kind of differentiate what we actually think about it. So the first one I have is Dice doesn't finish as a top 50 running back, and that's at 5 Wide Football. My boy Dan said that. On the flip side, though, at DuBois22 said Geis is a top 12 running back. So we got two different sides of the spectrum here. I guess this will be one of the only ones that's which side you more lean on. So let's go with Chris first, then Steve, and I'll cap us off. But Chris, what's your view? Are you buying? Tell me what you're buying with Geis, I guess.
Well, so here's the thing real quick. You see top 50 or top 12. That's one extreme or the other. And that leaves a lot of gray area in between. And I've made no bones about not my dislike for Darius Geis, just fading him altogether in all formats. So I'm going to very much sell this. And I think the more likely of the two that's going to happen is he falls outside of the top 50 this season. I mean, come on. What kind of question is this? The guy has yet to play a full season, right? His ADP is sitting at like 70, 71-ish, right? So I'm not expecting much from him this season. And again, I want everybody to be successful. I want people to succeed, do well, be happy. If he does well, I'll be the first person to say I was wrong. But until then, I'm going to tell you that I'm fading Darius Geis in all formats until proven otherwise, right?
Okay, so Chris is a big fade on the Darius Geis hype. Steve, what says you?
Yeah, I'm with Chris on the large gap between RB50 and RB12. I don't know if I can quite commit to RB12.
Yeah,
just on the injuries alone, like you mentioned, Sports Injury Predictor gives him a 60% chance of injuring any part of his body again. He's had knee injuries, his whole career. Missed his rookie season. Only played 5 games last season. Just every time he thought he'd come back, he came back, and then he left. He's had one good game, over 100 yards, a couple of TDs, which is great. But we've seen a lot of not so great running backs have great games. I don't think that means too much. So to me to commit to a guy that has such a big injury history and say that he's going to be a top 12 running back, I mean, that'd be great. We've seen pictures. We've seen the pictures on Twitter. He's got huge quads, huge hamstrings. Like he's the prototypical running back in the NFL, and he should be able to do a lot. But if you can't stay on the field, you can't be a top 12 running back. And I think it's more likely that he misses games. And when you miss games, you can't be a top 12 running back. So I'll go the latter and go RB 50 or less.
Okay. All right. So you guys are pretty close on that. I'm going to stay on the same train as you guys just because of the same sort of things you guys touched on. But 42 career attempts, hasn't been able to stay on the field. We saw I think there was 2 different medias of him. One was a video, one was a picture, and everyone's like, man, this guy looks healthy, looks like he's in good shape, because he historically has not been in great shape, as comments from other people would say. But I think Fantasy Pros, I wrote down, had him going 32 for the position in 2020, and they had guys like Jordan Howard, Philip Lindsay, Sony Michel going after him. And my counter for that is we've actually seen these guys perform at the NFL level. We really haven't with Geis. And also, I'd like to add, if the Redskins are a team that struggles, like I don't know if I could say the Redskins. If Washington is the team that struggles again like they did last year, I don't know if it favors the running back that doesn't catch out of the backfield. I think with them probably chasing a lot of games, I think guys like potentially Antonio Gibson or a Bryce Love or someone else who's going to be more of the pass catching back on a team that might have to throw a lot is going to be more successful. So I think for you to be a top 12 guy, I think your volume's got to be good. You have to stay healthy, like we said. And I think you got to be kind of the all-around back. And I don't really see him being that. So I'm more towards the 50 than the 12 side. And I'm also going past the 32. I think he's leaning a little bit beyond that as well. So any other comments, guys, on Geis for 2020?
No, if you noticed, his hamstrings had their own biceps. So
I'll just say that the only format I maybe buy him in is like a best ball league, and that's if he kind of slips to me, just because in best ball I tend to take more shots on players that could blow up or might have a couple good weeks, and maybe you'll see that with Geis. Maybe he'll be injured and maybe he'll come back and he'll have a blow up game over 100 yards in a TD, and then he'll go back down. And if I get him at the right price, that's probably the only format I'll get him in. But in my season long leagues, I don't really want to take the risk.
Yeah, Anthony from P2W doesn't like it. He's a Geis owner. His comment popped up just saying "wow," so I'll have to hide that for now. But
really
I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk or rude, but what in God's name makes you think this guy is going to be a top 12 running back? He's done absolutely nothing. And like you said, Steve, and to be honest, I didn't even know that Injury Predictor site was even in existence.
Oh, yeah.
And you just said that it was over what, a 60% chance.
60% chance.
He hurts himself again. And again, God forbid that. I want to see all these guys be happy and healthy and productive. But in this case, I cannot stamp this or vouch for anything when we've clearly haven't seen him do anything. So to me, it's one of those questions where it's one or the other, and there's only one clear right answer here, because he doesn't have anything we could use to back it up. I mean, it's simple as that. And I'm not trying to be an a-hole, but it's just it's not.
Everyone wants him to be good, but he just has had a history going back to college and high school and everything of injuries stacking up, and that doesn't bode well for someone in the NFL. Such a gruesome game in the league where everyone's extremely physical. It just doesn't bode out, well. So yeah, taking the ladder. He's not an RB12 unless he plays 14 games at least.
It looks like Thor from P2W is also in agreement with Anthony. So I might have just lost the house with the P2W guys. So
hey,
it might have to be a meeting afterwards, but we'll hide that comment too. Let's go to another running back for our second question here. Chicago Bears fan myself. Let's talk David Montgomery. This is from the Dynasty Dweebs. My guys from Baltimore. Good guys over there. I believe it was Austin that said David Montgomery will finish as a top 10 running back. We'll just assume across formats. Maybe it's PPR. We talk a lot of PPR on the show, but David Montgomery. Steve, we'll have you start this one off. Are you buying it or are you fading it for top 10 running back 2020?
So I think you mentioned in the format earlier that I'm not 100% buying it, but I think I'm buying it more than I'm completely fading it. He's obviously a hot name this offseason, a value running back you can get outside of the top 10 RBs, definitely. And he was RB 25 last year in his rookie season, and that's just outside an RB2 in a 12-team league. So that's pretty solid for a rookie running back. He had 60% of the share with his team. Obviously, Tariq Cohen looms over. The offense just wasn't great last year. Put David Montgomery on the team in 2018, and maybe he would be a lot better because that offense was pretty good in 2018. So obviously the Bears hope to bounce back. How optimistic I am on that team bouncing back offensively, I don't know. I like the weapons they have. The quarterback is obviously a question. But the good thing is David Montgomery is their goal line guy, sees all the goal line carries, and he had more than plenty last year. And he only converted on 6 of them. So I think he can get in the end zone more, get closer to that 10 touchdown mark. And I think overall, just being in the league for another year, I think he can get better, and obviously improve the yardage and whatnot. The efficiency, his efficiency wasn't too great. Just the team itself, if they get a little better, I think Dave Montgomery goes right with them. And I think that could lead him to a, high-end RB2, possibly RB1 season. So I'll say that I could buy RB10.
Okay, and quick comment from Twitter here. Mac Attack 5005 says, big note of that. Just a pounder who will never catch with Cohen on that team. That's a quick comment there. Steve's buying into it to a degree, like he said, and explain there. Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, let me start this off with a question, and anybody that's watching live or will watch this, feel free to answer us back now or later on. If I gave you guys statistics where I said this running back is going to finish with probably 1,100, 1,200 yards, all-purpose yards, and about 7 total touchdowns, would that make that running back a top 10 guy? Most of the time, most answers would be no. And that's what I have for David Montgomery's projections this year. I won't get into specifics, just give you vague things. Like I said, about 1,100 yards, 7 total touchdowns, 2, maybe 3 receiving touchdowns, and the rest will be rushing touchdowns, let's say. So given that fact, I'm going to fade this. Mind you, I'm a big David Montgomery fan. As a Detroit Lions fan, as an NFC North guy, I get to see them play Chicago twice a year, one home, one away. I'm a fan of what he can do. I also like Tariq Cohen. I know this isn't about him, but we've mentioned him a few times already. But I've said this several times on other podcasts, on radio shows, even in my writing. Miles Sanders and David Montgomery came into the league last year, and they were supposed to be phenomenal, right? And it just seemed like Chicago didn't know what to do with David Montgomery last season until later in the year. So when you're looking at it, you might say, well, Chris, how can you say they didn't know how to use him? He had 242 total rushing attempts. Yes, but I feel like that's going to be scaled back this year. I know it doesn't make sense. A rookie gets 242 carries, so sky's the limit. We're going to all be over the moon for him, and draft him where we should be. Again, I like David Montgomery, not a top 10 guy. I could argue top 15, and even then I'd be a little bit apprehensive with this. So I'm going to fade this one, guys.
Yeah, I think I'm more towards the 15 to 20 range than I am the 10 to 15 range. I think he does improve. Let's say hypothetically that there's a change in quarterback, and let's say he's healthy, and moving forward their offense operates significantly better and more efficient than they did. I think that gives him maybe more opportunities in the red zone, like you're saying, Chris, with some touchdown ceiling increase. But I think so often in fantasy we talk about how like Nick Chubb's got a ceiling because of Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt takes away the pass catching from Nick Chubb and what he could be. And I don't think it's talked about enough with David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. Dave Montgomery in college, Iowa State, was a good pass catching back. He's not utilized as much as he should be with that part of the game. Is Tariq Cohen good at that, and does he excel with that? Sure, but I think that caps what we actually can get from David Montgomery. And as a Bears fan and a fantasy owner, I don't have Montgomery, but I think that's what makes me shy away from him a little bit, just because he's good at something that he's not really used in enough. And looking at this past season, you said 242, Chris, for attempts. He was 13th in rushing attempts with only a 3.7 average. So is that all on him? Is that part of a little bit the offensive line being pretty poor at times? I'm not sure, but I think he progresses because I think the offense moves forward with maybe a new quarterback and maybe year two of understanding people's roles on the team. But I can't put him in the top 10 range just because of the ceiling that I think he has, and because of not really having great flashes last year. He might have had a few good games that were good for fantasy owners, but I don't think it was consistent at all. So I'm actually going to fade it as well, but not fade it to where I think he's worse than last year. So any last comments with David Montgomery? It's kind of tough to talk bad about a Bears player with some buddies watching this, but
I most certainly do not think Dave Montgomery is going to be an RB10. I'm just saying I could possibly buy the fact.
Yeah,
you're right, though. Their offensive line is pretty crummy, and Tariq Cohen is there. But I just think what the Bears did last year with Nagy in the run game on how he just completely mismanaged the whole offense, I just think there's no way they don't change it. And just because he had 242 attempts doesn't mean he can't have that again, if not more. I think they have to run the ball more. Watched plenty of Bears games, and they just didn't run the ball in the right situations and whatnot. So I like the thought of that possibility, happening more than I'm just going to fade him and say, no way he's 10, because I didn't get there. I mean, there's always guys that finish RB10. You're like, wow, that guy finished RB10. So like, I could totally see it.
Real quick, it's nothing against David Montgomery and the Bears. I would love to have David Montgomery on my team as my real life starting running back, but there's just no way. I mean, I'm not going to bore you guys with the list of the other running backs that are in the top 10: CMC, Saquon, Zeke, Alvin, Cook, Henry, Jacobs, Drake.
Right. It goes on and on. Seem a lot worse.
It just goes on and on.
Yeah,
Eckler, Sanders, Mixon. I mean,
true.
Yeah. All right. Well, looks like we're going to stay in the NFC North on this next one. And we're going to go with a wide receiver. This is from @TheDynasty1010. He says, Lazard inside the top 30 wide receivers in 2020. And I know Steve would like that as a Packers fan. We got Bears, Packers, and Detroit all in the same live stream here. That was not planned at all, but interesting enough. I'll lead the way on this one for Allen Lazard. I'm a big truther for his. I think just reading up, obviously everything's always like analyst reports and coach talk when it comes to off-field relationships, but the things that have been said with Aaron Rodgers having a good relationship with him and saying that he respects him getting after it. They sit next to each other in the film room. That's been said before. Different quotes by Rodgers. I buy into stuff like that because I think it translates to the regular field. Looking at this past season, Lazard, week 6, he was wide receiver 16. So these finishes could depend on your league, but this is what I got for Fantasy Pros. Week 6, wide receiver 16. Week 13, he was wide receiver 12. And then week 17, wide receiver 19. So only 3 weeks there, but we saw 3 different flashes of inside the top 20 finishes for him. So I think if he does get that secondary volume behind Devontae Adams, and he does continue to build his relationship on the field with Aaron Rodgers, could he finish wide receiver 29? So this says wide receiver 30. Could he be wide receiver 29? I think absolutely, especially when we've seen him do it maybe only 3 times, but he does have the capability to have some big weeks. So as long as that is on a consistent basis, maybe it's not wide receiver 29, 30. Maybe it's closer to the wide receiver 20 to 25 mark. So I'm a believer in him. I've invested in him, so I'm crossing my fingers. But I'm buying this one, guys. Steve, we'll go with you on this one. Then we'll go with Chris. What do you think, Steve?
I mean, as you can see earlier, I want this to happen so bad. Just desperate for the Packers to have another receiving option. Never, since we had Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb out there as a good duo, we haven't had anything like it. And you touched on it earlier that their off-the-field relationship has been publicly known, that it's growing and whatnot. We obviously saw Allen Lazard get more work later on in the year. His snap percentage went up and whatnot, started to get targeted a lot more in the last couple games of the season, which is great because Aaron Rodgers is a guy that targets his guys. He throws the ball to the guys that he can trust. And unfortunately, he doesn't really give a lot of other guys chances because that's just the way he operates. And the team hasn't really done a lot for him by giving him a huge, I guess, what would you say, dependable receiving cast around him and whatnot. Aaron Jones has been involved in the offense a lot. Obviously, Devontae's out there. There's a clear opening for a third guy. And people have talked about Jay Sternberger at tight end coming in, Allen Lazard. We tried the whole MVS Geronimo last year. Didn't work out. And the fact that it didn't work out last year for those guys is why I'm fading Allen Lazard as a top 30 receiver this year. As much as I really want it to happen, I just don't really see the offense changing too much, trying to feature a second wide receiver as like a main target. I think they would rather shift their game to the ground game, drafting a guy like A.J. Dillon pretty high in the draft to go along with Aaron Jones. Obviously, Matt LaFleur comes from a team with Derrick Henry a few years ago. I feel like, not that he wants A.J. Dillon to be Derrick Henry, but I think that he would rather run a good ground game attack. And I don't think featuring another top 24 wide receiver in fantasy is really the go-to. Not saying it can't happen. I just think that he's more around like a 35 to 40 receiver, which would still be pretty good in fantasy and pretty good for the Green Bay offense. But I don't really see him cracking the top 30.
And real quick, we got Ryan for Bootleg Fantasy. Steve talking Packers wide receiver is his happy place. So
it would be if I wasn't talking him down.
I think I think he said that before. I'm also rocking the Sixers jersey. Shout out to Philly with that. Chris, what do you think? So you're going to be the decision maker here between us 3.
This is one of the most ridiculous questions I think I've ever been asked on any show. Allen Lazard, top 30 wide receiver. Absolutely no way. Not close. So you're saying a guy who's going to catch 40 passes for 500 yards this coming season is going to be top 30? I mean, I that's all I got to say, really. If you look at his ADP, what is it? 167, 170. Some leagues he's not even being drafted. And I know the argument, guys, can go from undrafted in fantasy, mind you, to being producing. It's not happening here. If you look at mock drafts or fantasy football calculator, you have flipping kickers and DSTs going before this guy. He is not going to be a top 30 wide receiver. And listen, I know a lot of you guys, we've had a lot of interactions. I've done a lot of writing. I'm not normally like aggressive or like a ESPN show where the two sports guys are always fighting with each other and trying to be like insane with each other. But for some reason tonight, it's just getting me right in the chest. There's no way, Lazard.
I like this side. I like this side of you though, Chris. I like it. I like the fierceness.
I mean, I like it too. Like I mentioned earlier, I think Allen Lazard is kind of just another name like MVS or Geronimo that we want it to happen. We want another number 2 in Green Bay. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think Allen Lazard probably has the best chance out of those 3 guys I just listed, but I still don't think it's going to happen.
Bootleg Fantasy says the Detroit is showing.
Yeah, bring the gloves, man. Come on.
Does he even know what that means?
Hey, I'm the messenger. I'm the messenger.
Ooh.
All right. Hopefully, I'm gonna let Chris go first in this next one because I want to be careful with my answer. But number 5. So we're halfway through with this one. This is from @Jordan Halls. He says Michael Pittman Jr. ends the year as the top rookie wide receiver. So rookie wide receiver number 1, Michael Pittman. Chris, yes or no?
No, but like when you're in court, you say no, you get a speeding ticket, and you have to plead guilty or not guilty. And if you plead guilty, it's with an explanation, right? So I'm going to say Michael Pittman, no, but with an explanation. I like what this kid can do. I really enjoy his talent. It's a kid that I've recently, I don't want to say discovered, but I've been getting into, what he did in college and like combine numbers and everything. But we all know, the two of you, all three of us here, let's say, and everybody that's watching, this was a very deep offensive draft class as far as running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, linebackers, even into the defensive side. So when you really look into it, Michael Pittman is good, but I just don't think he's number 1 rookie wide receiver, number 1 overall good. Jerry Jeudy, CD Lamb, Ruggs, Jefferson, Higgs, even Mims in New York. I'm not saying that Mims or Higgins or Jefferson in Minnesota will finish in that top number 1 overall spot. There's just a lot more talent, and that talent is in better situations on their professional teams. Again, I don't know what's wrong with me where I always have to preface it by saying I wish these guys the best because I don't want to catch heat or people say I'm hating or I'm a jerk, but I love what Pittman can do. I pulled a rookie autographed card of his recently, so he's one of my favorite rookie wide receivers. I just don't see it happening.
All right, and I'll make one quick side note. You don't have to do any explanation for it. We'll have Steve do the same. Just spit out your wide receiver rookie number 1. One guy.
Me. I'm going Jerry Jeudy in Denver. Close
Okay.
second. I'll go Jeudy in Denver, Higgins in Cincinnati, Mims in New York for the Jets. 1, 2, 3.
All right. Fair enough. Steve, what do you got on this one?
This is tough. I'm not really too big on rookies, but my favorite guys, I'd go with Ruggs and then Rieger, and then I do like Michael Pittman as my number 3. Just because, and I'll just kind of fade it. I'll fade into the Michael Pittman description. I'm not like super high on any of these rookies. Really, they all landed in interesting situations where they obviously all have question marks around them.
Yeah.
But when you watch Michael Pittman's game tape and put him in the situation he is in with Phillip Rivers in Indy, maybe he can be his kind of jump ball guy like Keenan Allen was. Well, I guess maybe downfield threat is Mike Williams, but Keenan Allen, a guy that can win the possessions and whatnot. Maybe Pittman can be that kind of guy for him, and Ty would be the guy that kind of takes the top off the defense. If we're kind of filling roles here. So I think he's granted a good quarterback overall, a guy that's arguably one of the better quarterbacks. I'm not going to say of all time, but since I've been watching football, Phillip Rivers has always been a quality quarterback, and he lands on the Colts with a good O-line. Going to be plenty of time for them to create space and get open and catch passes from Rivers. So I like Pittman with the upside. I just like some of these other guys better. The talent alone with Jeudy and Lamb, and I even like Ruggs a lot more. I'm growing on him a lot, even in that Oakland or Las Vegas offense. I don't see Pittman being as the top guy though.
So we got Bootleg Fantasy said you've done well with Rieger at 2, Steve. That's what we wanted.
Yeah, I did that for him.
And shout out the Degenerate one logging on here too. So I like Pittman as my, if this were to happen down the list like we're making, I got him as number 3 for rookies. If I had to rank them for 2020 specifically, I would go Jerry Jeudy number 1. He was my wide receiver 1 before the draft. And number 2, I'd go with Justin Jefferson just because of the amount of vacated targets that could be up in the air for the tight ends, or Jefferson could come in and snag a lot of those. So I think I go Jeudy, Jefferson, and then Pittman. The reason for Pittman is I think he has the opportunity to step right into volume. I don't think a guy like Paris Campbell is going to be unbeatable for the wide receiver 2 on that team. Also looking at Pittman, the dude's 6'4", 223. And on his combine notes, I've seen in more than one note that he's a big goal line weapon. So speaking specifically in a fantasy, touchdowns equal fantasy points. So if he becomes a good red zone target for a quarterback that's been very good in the league and he's a very good vet, could he sneak into that wide receiver rookie one? I'm not going to say yes, but I don't think it's not a possibility, because if he's got the volume and if he has the opportunity to snag some touchdowns on a weekly or other weekly basis, who knows? So I think Pittman for me, number 3, Jerry Jeudy 1, and Jefferson's my 2 guy. But I do think Pittman's going to be very good. There's guys that are going to be in the right spot this year. Like we talked about Ruggs already, he could easily be the wide receiver 1 on the team. You look at Denzel Mims, like Chris said. Could he push out a guy like Perryman and take away from Crowder? Absolutely. We just have to see how these offenses operate. So, I like Pittman lots. I'm not going to say number 1. So, any comments further on this one, guys?
Yeah, real quick. They're just, when you look at other guys like Rieger in Philly or Jefferson in Minnesota, they're already their team's number 2 wide receiver, basically. Thielen and Jefferson in Minnesota. Rieger, who's the other receiver there? You got Ertz, who's a tight end, but he's also a pretty damn good wide receiver, let's say. But when you get to Indianapolis, as Steve said, I've loved watching Phil Rivers in his career. And I think we can all agree that Rivers is going to wind up throwing at least minimally 500 pass. He's going to have 500 attempts this year. The only thing that I dislike is there's still a lot of moving parts there. And I hate the saying too many mouths to feed. I don't know. I just don't like it. There's just too many moving parts, let's say. As you said, Nick, Paris Campbell, but he's still there. He's a moving part. Jack Doyle is there, right? And then you got the rookie running back, Taylor, that they're probably going to want to feed and maybe give him like a prominent role. Marlon Mack is still there. Naeem Hines, their coaches said he's going to take some passing down work. So Pittman, again, is a damn good wide receiver. I love his long-term prospects here in the league. This year, as a rookie, number 1, fading it.
Okay. Steve, anything else for this one? Or
I'm with him on I guess I'll just say too many mouths to feed, but I think that might be a offense that's hard to predict. And I'll just leave it at that as far as like who's going to go off each week. Jonathan Taylor, the rookie's in there. Ty, we don't know what he can do with Phil Rivers. He's a guy that's battled injuries. You have tight ends there, Jack Doyle, Trey Burton. It's like we don't know exactly what that offense's identity is yet. And to say Michael Pittman is their identity, that's what it'll have to be for him to be a top rookie wide receiver, most likely. So I'm not going that way.
And Bootleg Fantasy said, got to watch out for me and Steve's boy, Jack of all trades, Doyle. So
name drop, just gave it to him. All
right. So let's move on to the next one here. I think we have 2 Chiefs-related questions in a row. Question 6 and 7. So 6 here. This is from @dmendy02. Said CEH, so Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is a top 7 running back in PPR 2020. So Chris, take it away with this one.
I'm going to fade this one here. Again, we don't know. When it comes to, betting on, writing about, talking about, giving opinions on rookies, it's all just a weird, mucky area, especially with it being, July 13th. None of these people, nobody, in fact, has stepped on the field yet. We don't know how these position battles are going to shake out. There's just a lot of we don't know, right? So to say Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be a top 7 PPR back, it would be very negligent of me to say, yeah, he's going to do it and, start pulling out all the stops there. Again, like I said, with the DeMont discussion in Chicago, I can rattle off about 10 to 15 other running backs that are probably more than likely going to finish above Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So when you get into that top 10, even more importantly, top 7 PPR running back range, I just can't do it. There's no way I'm fading it. Not with McCaffrey, Saquon, Zeke, Alvin, Jacobs, Mixon, Miles, Drake. You can even throw in guys like Bell or Gurley. So I'm going to fade it. Again, long-term prospects are amazing. A rookie season, not there yet, kid.
All right. I'm gonna hop in as the 2 spot, and I'll let Steve cap us off here. But I said this before, and I'll just kind of keep harping on it. I think people want Clyde Edwards-Helaire so bad to be Kareem Hunt's rookie year. And Kareem Hunt, 272 attempts, 1,327 yards, and 53 catches his rookie year. So he had a great rookie season. But the second most rushing attempts that year came from Alex Smith. So it kind of shows the competition that Kareem Hunt had his rookie year. Damian Williams, third in playoff yards, second in playoff rushing touchdowns. So he balled out at the end of the season. He is not going to disappear, and he's going to have a role. And I think they're going to use him, even if the intent is not to keep him around long term. I think if they're ahead in games, who are you going to give the rock to? You're going to give it to your rookie and chance something later down the road when you're getting close to playoffs, or you're going to give the rock to Damian Williams and let him just carry the load for games you might be carrying and have a good lead in. So again, he's not going to have the Kareem Hunt rookie season, in my opinion. I think he is going to be very good. I think he is a phenomenal dynasty asset, but I think he might slightly disappoint some people in 2020 based off of their expectations. So I don't think he's going to flop. I don't think he'll have a bad season, but I think the expectation is he's like going to start off like Saquon's rookie year. Saquon was number 1 in rushing yards, and he was an absolute monster his rookie year. I just don't think it's going to be the case for Edwards-Helaire with Williams still going to be in the mix, regardless of how you see Damian. So I'm going to also fade this, and I don't think it's going to be close to PPR number 7 for running backs. And if it is, I'll get back on here and apologize to the CEH truthers about that. But Steve, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm about to go on a rant. Yeah, the answer is no. He's not going to be a top 7 RB, even in PPR. Obviously, CEH is great. We saw him at LSU. That whole offense thrived, though. So, everyone else needs to be boosted as well. CEH is just getting more hype than any other rookie running back I've seen in a long time. And I feel like that gets paired with like Patrick Mahomes and his greatness, Tyreek Hill and his greatness, and Travis Kelce and his greatness, and the fact that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year. And the hype out of the draft, Patrick Mahomes wants Clyde. It's all just getting boosted so much. You will not find me taking CEH in the second round of a fantasy football draft. You won't. Because even in the year when Kareem Hunt, and you stole my thunder earlier with Kareem Hunt, I had these facts loaded up, But,
I had a second for that.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt, dude, even his situation when he got drafted, when we drafted in fantasy football leagues, in 2017, I think I got him in the 4th round. And this was after Spencer Ware already got injured. So he was basically going in as the only guy in town, and he was the only guy in town, no one to battle out. Damian Williams is here. The team has come out and said, we want Damian Williams to be our guy, and not our guy, officially our guy, but the guy who's going to start the season, and he's not going anywhere. I think Clyde is good enough to maybe beat him out, but you're talking second half of the season. You might lose some games because he took CEH in the second round. I don't know if it's going to be worth it. And that's how I feel. Just his ADP is completely out of my range where I want him. Maybe I'll start considering him in early round 4 if that's where I'm at, because I do like CEH a lot, but I think there's too many question marks around him. Obviously, he's very good, and Patrick Mahomes wanted him on the team, but that's a good offense. They're already going to spread the ball around a lot. They want Damian there. I guess the only good thing he has going for him is that Damian Williams is injury prone, and maybe Andy Reid wants someone that's a little more reliable. So maybe the first chance Damian, when he goes down, maybe it's CEH's job. But when's that going to happen? Are you willing to take a second round selection chance on that? The answer for me is no. So I'm not in on CEH's top 7. I could see him being top 15 if a lot of things go right. Maybe top 12 if he's the starter after week 3 or 4. But he's not cracking top 7. Like Chris mentioned, there's a lot of good running backs in the league right now, and he might be one of those one day, but I don't think this year is it.
All right, I'm going to throw in 2 comments from our live stream. This from Upside City said Tom Brady will throw more touchdowns than Patrick Mahomes. Which, all right. And number double move sports said Damian Williams split carries with McCoy. LOL.
Hey, they're going to split carries there no matter what. And I don't think CH having a game or two is going to kick Damian Williams to the curb. McCoy was obviously an Andy Reid guy, and we saw later on in the year he kind of got faded out because obviously he was just too washed up, and Damian Williams took over, and that's what happened. So I don't think that's a good comparison. I think Damian Williams is decent. CH is probably better, but I don't think it's going to be right from the get-go like Kareem Hunt. I think a lot of people are having that vision, and that's just not what it is right away, at least.
We also have DFS dudes saying, "Hey boys, it's part of this team." Chris, anything else on this one?
No, I'm all set. It was well said, Steve.
All right, let's. So this one's a little off the fantasy football train. It's more about real life football, but this one we'll probably fire off real quick. Let me make sure I have the right at to put it on the thread. This is from Sports Data Man, at Sports Data Man. He said Chiefs will go undefeated in 2020. So not necessarily a fantasy football take. Let's just quick fire this one out. Chris, Chiefs undefeated, any chance in that?
No, with an explanation real quick, if I may.
Of course.
So not too long ago, probably a week to 10 days ago, I wrote a 2020 fantasy stuffed games article, right? And it would have been really easy for me to put Kansas City in there every week as I listed, week by week. And I wrote 3 games down. I just highlighted them. Not going to get into some weird in-depth explanation, but week 3, Kansas City is in Baltimore. Week 14, Kansas City is in New Orleans. And then week 11, Kansas City is in Tampa Bay. Those are the 3 games I have in my mind. Losing probably 2 of those 3 games. I'm going to say in Baltimore early on, and then week 11 in Tampa Bay. Mahomes, Brady, set your calendars. Going to be fantastic. So, no, they don't go undefeated. They lose 2 or 3 games.
Steve, any chance?
No, they don't win. It's really, really hard to go 16-0 in the NFL. And even last year, we saw some hiccups with the team. Their defense fell apart at times, and even their offense. Obviously, we saw them in the Super Bowl. They were down to the 49ers. They came back and win because that's what great quarterbacks do, and that's what Mahomes is. But to put together a 16-0 season, I could see it maybe happening in a few years for Mahomes. I obviously think he's very good, but it takes a lot to go 16-0. Tom Brady's the greatest of all time. He did it. So they're not there yet. So no.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs defense has definitely improved, and we saw an upswing in that. I don't know if it's there to be an undefeated team. I wrote down some of the same things Chris said. Ravens was the team I wrote down. I also wrote down the Bills, the Broncos, Bucks, and Saints. A couple different games that I think might be up in the air, and I wouldn't count them out as losing those games. Some of those are a little bit more of a reach, but also like what Steve said, there was a few games last year where it might have been a high-scoring game that they lost or they barely won, but that kind of rose some red flags for their defense just a little bit. But I think to go undefeated, do they have some tools those guys involved? Yes, but I think it's just so much of a threat, especially with the talent, in the NFL and some of these teams like the Bucks and the Bills making changes and having great pieces on both sides of the ball, even Broncos here. And I'm a big believer in the Ravens too, so I'm gonna fade this one pretty easily for me. All right, are we good with this one? Move on to the next one.
Yep.
Okay. This is number 8. Tyler Boyd will finish as a top 10 wide receiver in PPR formats. This is from Casey Corbett on Twitter here. So Tyler Boyd, top 10 wide receiver PPR. Steve, believing in this at all?
I'm not going to go on a rant about this one, but it's a big no for me. There's a lot of good receivers in the NFL. We've seen Tyler Boyd, do pretty decent in the past couple of years with AJ Green been down. And don't get me wrong, I definitely think AJ Green is going to get injured again. I don't want him to, but that's where it's going.
No.
I think it's going to happen. I'm not an AJ Green guy. I learned many years ago to avoid him, and it's paid out for me the last couple of years. Definitely avoiding him in drafts. And Tyler Boyd's probably going to be the guy, but with the whole new offense there with Joe Burrow, the second-year head coach and whatnot, I like Tyler Boyd. I could see him being a more top 20 guy. Then I'm not going to put him in as a top 10 guy. I feel like that's kind of a stretch. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Chris is itching to say something. So
not really. I love AJ Green. I mean,
me too.
It's faded over the years, but what can you do? I think this is going to be his year 31 season, 30 if I'm not mistaken. He's a good man. I got no issue there. But when it comes to Tyler Boyd being top 10, no, fade that one. But when I looked into this about an hour before we went live here, boys, he had a really good 2019 season. I mean, he caught 90 balls, over 1,000 yards. I mean, it was closer than I thought. You know, it's just my let's say my ignorance of not know. You know, you can't know everybody, right? You can't be that big of a weirdo where you have every player tuned into your head and the gears turning. No, he's not going to be a top 10 PPR wide receiver. Again, Boyd, John Ross, T. Higgins is there now, AJ Green, Mixon. I know it's going to be nasty for me to say this, but Gio Bernard is there doing something, lurking around. So no, he's not a top 10 wide receiver, but I wouldn't mind him on my team as my wide receiver 2 is getting a little ambitious, but he's a stud wide receiver 3, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tyler Boyd. I'm not going to put him in my top 10. 2019 wide receiver 18, 2018 wide receiver 17. Again, depending on your league formats, but he's actually been pretty consistent the last 2 years. Chris, you touched on his catch totals, but 7th in targets this past year and 11th in reception. So he's on that upper half of some good wide receiver stats. I think he improves this year, even with AJ Green there. Maybe AJ Green is healthy for a full season. I mean, we all want him to be. Maybe he won't be, but I think in either scenario, I think the team and the offense and the offensive coordinator, head coach, I think they trust Tyler Boyd and they trust giving him a good volume. And I'm hoping that him and Burrow link up pretty good. I personally, even with a healthy AJ Green, and this will be my own hot take, I personally wouldn't be surprised if Boyd out targets AJ Green, even if he is healthy. Maybe that's a hot take on my part, but I'm not going to put him as a top 10. I'd be comfortable bumping him up to like wide receiver 15 though, especially if he doesn't have all the eyes on him with a healthy AJ Green. I'd be comfortable saying that. I don't think he regresses this year at all, even with the question marks about a new and improved or doing just different offense. So again, I like Tyler Boyd. I actually try to get Tyler Boyd in as many leagues as I can, but I think top 10 is a little too pushy for me.
Yeah. In my, I've told a lot of people this, but because if you look in a lot of comments and such, I have kind of like a roundabout idea of projections. I don't want to be that guy who puts out 17 different projections a month. I'd like to do just one in August, but I do, as it stands right now, I have Burrow throwing about 525 times. And to back up your claim, Nick, I firmly believe that Boyd gets more targets than AJ Green, and it will be close. I'm thinking Boyd gets around 125 targets, where AJ gets only about 110. So that's very realistic.
Anything else on this one, Steve? Or are we good?
No, I'm good.
All right. So the last 2 hot takes are both quarterbacks, and both involve 2 different quarterbacks finishing in the top 1 or top 3. So I'm going to combine this for the sake of time here. I'll read off both out of respect to the people that posted them, though, and we can just straight fire both these quarterbacks. But at FF_fire911 said Kyler finishes as QB1, so the QB1, and the other take, so we can just go on a tangent on both of these. The other take is from at Hey Mr. Holman. He says Matthew Stafford. So here's a Detroit player for you here, Chris. Matthew Stafford, top 3 fantasy quarterbacks. So you can talk as much as you want about both of these guys, more one than the other, whatever you guys want to do. But the hot takes here is Tyler, QB1, so number 1 finish, and then Matt Stafford, top 3. You guys call out who goes on this last tangent here. Oh, point Steve. All right.
I didn't know which way to go. I'm doing.
This is kind of a strange question though for me though, because I love Kyler Murray and I kind of see him as a top 3 quarterback, but I also can see Matt Stafford finishing as a top 3 quarterback. So this is like, it's kind of tough. They kind of coincide with each other.
Yeah.
If I want one more to be true than the other, I kind of hope Kyler finishes as QB1 because I am extremely high on Kyler. I think his ability is MVP-esque. I don't think he's going to be the MVP, but I think he could be on the sheet, the final 5 names when you're running for it. Big fan of Kyler Murray, but to beat out Patrick Mahomes and obviously what we could see what Lamar Jackson does, it's going to be tough. I think Kyler adds some yards on the ground this year, which will help him get him closer to the category of Lamar Jackson, and I think he improves his overall game. But Matt Stafford last year, on pace for 5,038 touchdowns in his first 8 games before he goes down, just 10 interceptions. QB4 at the time. I know he even had MVP talks. This is a tough one. If I'm going to go with, I think between these two, I'm going to choose which hot take I think can be more true. And I think it's going to go with Kyler Murray, QB1, the Matt Stafford top 3. I don't know. I don't really have much more to say than that. I want Kyler Murray to be really good, and I think he's my number 3 quarterback, so he's pretty close already. So if anything happens to Mahomes or Lamar, if they just regress in any way, Kyler can step right in. Obviously, it would have to be a huge improvement in his game, but I see that happening, so I'll buy it.
I quick read off 2 comments. Bootleg Fantasy. Matthew Stafford is a fantasy stud. Was near MVP race before injury last season. And P2W, I'm not a big fan of this guy, but I'll read his comment. He says Kyler is going to finish outside the top 10. So that is at Anthony P2W, and it's not at P2W Fantasy. So if you want to yell at somebody, that's at Anthony in front of that. But Chris, your turn.
Yeah, great question. And you have Kyler Murray, the young kid whose ADP is like 5th round, 56. We're not talking super flex. We'll just do standard or full point PPR. Let's say super flex, where you're going to get him. He's going to be, top 15 kind of guy. But to answer the question, is it Kyler finishes the number 1 overall quarterback or Stafford is a top 3? We know I'm from Detroit. It's in my damn handle, for God's sakes, at Detroit Beastie. I've long said that if I were to get not wild, but if I were to always argue homer kind of picks where I'd rather have Matthew Stafford over Kyler Murray and run with it, I would lose all integrity, all respectability, because I just look like a dope who only picks Lions just because that's the fan that I am. Now, both guys offer different things, and it depends on what you're looking for, right? Stafford's going to have more passing yards at the end of the season, but Kyler Murray's going to have more total touchdowns, and Kyler Murray's going to have more rushing yards, but he's going to have more interceptions than Matthew Stafford. So it's kind of I don't want to say pick your poison, but it's close enough to me where I then want to get into ADPs, because as we know, ADP, average draft position, where you get your value, or all these buzzwords, value, upside, things of that nature. So if you look at it, like I said, Kyler's ADP is very high. He's being drafted as a top 10 quarterback, where Stafford, his ADP isn't until like the 11th, 12th round, right? So what do you want to do? Do you want to grab a stud quarterback in Kyler really early and build your lineup elsewhere, or do you want to wait until after the 10th round and draft Stafford as you've accumulated stud running backs, stud wide receiver? So it's all, like they say, what's the saying? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Which one do you want to go here? But for the sake of the argument, I do believe that Kyler Murray, him being number 1 overall, is more realistic than Stafford being a top 3 quarterback. But again, I'm a weirdo. I could argue both sides. I could see both cases coming true. Kyler 1, Stafford's 3, and both hot takes come true.
Nick, this is a tough question when you put these together, man.
Hey, I'm not going to take the credit. It was all the Twitter community over there. But it was a good one in my opinion too. Especially with a lot of people being very high on Kyler Murray, especially after the Hopkins signing, but also before it too. I think everybody was very excited about him as rookie year, and he performed very well his rookie year. Matt Stafford, obviously, played 9 weeks of football this past year. He was QB6 during that time. Looking back since 2012, 3 times he was QB7, QB9 in the past. So he's never been like close to that 3 mark. I mean, it's close if you're 6, obviously, but he's never really capped that 6-7 mark. But I think he's got probably the best set of weapons he's ever had. I don't know. I mean, you're not going to say Kenny Galladay, Megatron, but you're also going to say, did Calvin Johnson have the supporting 2 good young running backs, up-and-coming tight end, Marvin Jones Jr.? I don't know if you can say those things for the passing Matt Stafford. So I think because of the weapons that he has going into this year, and I think a lot of the game script is going to favor throwing the ball a lot. I think he's closer to the 3 mark than Kyler is to the 1 for me. I think Kyler is going to have another very good season, but when I'm looking at the names of Lamar, Dak, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, I mean, guys like that, I don't know if he's going to beat all those guys to be number 1. I think what Stafford is probably missing is the rushing ceiling that these other quarterbacks have. Lamar Jackson, Dak does too. Kyler Murray runs the ball as well. I think Matt Stafford kind of missing that, but with Kenny Galladay leading the league this past season in touchdown receptions, he has that feeling of a wide receiver to have. So the touchdown upside might be there. So I'm going to go with Stafford closer to 3 than Kyler is to 1. I think Stafford's a dark horse going into 2020. That's not spoken about enough, and that pains me to say as a Bears fan, but I think it's true. I'll read this last comment here, and we touch some
my
more.
Boy.
Yeah, Donders FPT says Steve is cute. So, I mean,
Here we are.
I guess we're good on Chris, but all right.
Thanks, Donders.
Anything else with the 2 quarterbacks, guys?
I'll just say one thing about Kyler: 544 rushing yards in his rookie season. The upside is there, man. He can get every bit of 750, 800, I think, if everything goes right. And rushing yards are unfair for quarterbacks in fantasy football. So I'll add that there. If he improves in the passing game and that offense gets better and he rushes the ball a lot more and he succeeds at it, I think QB1 is it's definitely it's in his body of work. I think it can happen.
Chris, anything else?
I'm with you. And yeah, I wanted to tell you, Nick, that I agree with you that this might be the best supporting cast he's had in his whole in his entire length tenure in Detroit, and that's saying something when you had Calvin and Burleson, and Golden Tate and things like that. But I think you're right when you say that. And an unrelated, it has nothing to do with fantasy football, but as a lifelong Detroiter and Detroit Lions fan, real quick, if I can have a couple minutes, I'm just so effing tired. Every year it's the same thing. The Lions are going to do it. They got the best supporting cast they've ever had. You should see them in OTAs and I just want them. I want to see them do it now before we start talking so highly of Matthew Stafford and his big supporting cast. But here we are again in the beginning of July, and I'm doing it all over again. I'm like a psychopath, TJ Hawkinson,
You don't gotta tell the Bears fan.
TJ Hawkinson, the young stud. He's been lifting weights with George Kittle, Swift, and everyone's writing off Carry-On. But why? So let's see what they do this season. That's all I really have to say.
I like that Carry-On comment. That's true.
I'm a huge Swift fan, so
Why not the tandem though?
Team Carry-On. So,
yeah.
That's dude. So here's another. We're getting a lot of likes. It's not really me. It's more you guys. The DFS.
Hey, someone say something nice about Nick. Come on.
Chris is dreamy. So I'm just waiting for one nice comment. Yeah, Chris is dreamy. DFS dudes, and then Anthony from P2W Team Carry-On. Of course, he owns Carry-On, so he's a big Carry-On guy. All right. We're getting close to the hour mark here. I actually thought it was earlier than that, but I want to thank both of you guys for coming on again. Chris, super active on Twitter, interacts with everybody, no matter if they have 2 followers or 2,000. DFS cheat sheet, big part of that. Always willing to work with people. Does awesome content for Climb the Pocket. He even changed his Twitter handle to reflect that he's big with those guys. And he links up with bootleg fantasy every week, and they drop awesome videos that everybody should be watching. But again, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on the podcast on a Monday, especially since those Mondays kind of suck for people or they're very long. I know for myself it was, but we'll start with Chris. Chris, where can the Twitter world find you? And the whole world. How about the world?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Detroit Beastie. You can find my content at DFS Cheat Sheet with actual sports coming back, baseball, basketball, and hockey. Look for the DFS content to be ramping up here real quick. And then a quick shout out to Fantasy Football Price Check. Him and I are getting together this week. No rush, no deadlines. We're going to get together this week and do a collaboration of some ADP guys that are, they're going really high, but guys I want to stay away from. So it's going to go hand in hand. I don't draft these guys, and then Price Check is going to do a little price check, as I said, on each guy. Tell me if I'm crazy or if it checks out. It's what he does. Fantasy Football Price Check. So look for that later in the week. You guys, I can't thank you enough. You guys all love the silly little graphic cards that I'm making. So guess what? I'm going to keep doing it.
All right. Steve, where can the world find you, man? I know your guys' ats are right there, but I'm going to put this on the podcast too for those that make it past an hour here.
Yeah, I just noticed I forgot the @ symbol, but find me on Twitter at Steve_CTP, and mostly over on YouTube. Climb the Pocket YouTube page. We're posting multiple videos every week. Me and Bootleg Fantasy. I'm sure you know them on Twitter if you're a fantasy football person. We're making fantasy football videos every single week, just trying to help you guys out, help you win your championships, help you be prepared for the draft. So find me mostly on there. Go over to our website, climbthepocket.com. That's where you're going to find all my personal rankings. We update them every, couple weeks or every week or so. Actually, pretty much however often I want them to. But you can find my personal rankings on there. And yeah, definitely check me out. We really appreciate any support you send my way. Nick, love coming on with you, man. You're the man. And if I could drop a comment, I'd say you look great.
Oh man, thanks. I mean, somebody had to say it at one point, but I appreciate it from you, Steve, over other people. But at P2W Fantasy here, this will go everywhere I can put it. So it's already on Twitter live right now. I'm going to put it on YouTube. I'll put it on the podcast, so you can definitely catch this if you missed it. But I'm going to sign off here. And thanks again, guys. Have a nice night.
Bye. Bye.